So my work over about a 20-year period has been focused on mapping large networks and organizations and then seeing what's unique about the high performers in those groups. So my focus today will be very much around the individual and what creates greater performance and effectiveness of an individual in terms of the way that they connect in organizations. And the core themes throughout is that it's not a big network that matters. It's not knowing a lot of people that distinguishes people that are more successful over time. There are really two core principles that seem to really differentiate people. First is having a structurally diverse network early stage in problem solving. So right when somebody is undertaking a new project, trying to win a new client, engaging in some new product development initiative, whatever it may be, right at that point where you're overloaded is exactly the right point to be reaching out and leveraging different kinds of capabilities to look at the problem space differently and uniquely. That's principle number one, is who and how you're reaching out to others in the network. The second core idea that's emerged from all this work is that it's not just reaching that matters, but it's also being somebody that's sought in networks. And so that's a really big deal in the sense that we see people that create pull and engagement from others, people that I call energizers. They create enthusiasm around them, and so they have better talent, better ideas, better information flowing to them over time. Statistically, they're about 4 times as likely to be a high performer as anything else we've seen. And it's not, again, as a product of just going out and meeting a lot of people, but rather looking at networking differently and being somebody that creates pull or draw to them over time. Again, these two ideas, the who, reaching into a structurally diverse network, early stage problem solving, and then the how, being somebody that creates pull and not push in networks, are very, very significant predictors of those people that are successful over time and will be the core of what I focus on here. We've seen over the past 8 to 10 years as the collaborative intensity of work has just exploded for most people, and it's a product of all sorts of things going on in the society, really. There's greater use of email, there's matrix-based structures, there's greater interdependence of work, time zones have become a greater issue as globalization and global product teams are working together. Just a whole suite of forces are increasing the collaborative intensity of work in different ways. In fact, in our databases, what we see is that the amount of time people spend on the phone, on email, or in meetings has gone up at least 50% for even the most transactional workers. And if you look at knowledge-based workers, or leaders in most organizations, they'll say they're spending about 85 to 90% of their time in those activities. Now the catch is that it's almost completely invisible work. There's nobody out there looking at where the collaborative time is going in different ways. There's no chief collaborative overload officers. And to me that's really astounding in the sense that if there were a resource that was consumed 50% or greater over a 10-year period, the chief financial officer would be all over it. But for some reason with collaboration, the knee-jerk reaction is always more is better, and that leads you into contexts where good benefits come from collaboration, but also unhealthy, inefficient practices consume time and effort and create burnout for others. So one of the things we're always focused on is not how do you just increase collaboration in organizations, but how do you create alignment between the collaborative patterns that are there and the strategic objectives of that organization, whether it be in terms of markets they're trying to serve, in terms of how they're trying to innovate in different ways, or how they're trying to get scale globally. It's really a targeted set of connections that you want to invest in and cultivate to get those kind of business benefits out and have impact over time. And then secondarily, with this idea of alignment, again, it's not more connectivity that distinguishes more success, but rather aligning with strategic objectives. You tend to also be able to use the network analytics to see where have we allowed inefficiencies to accrue. Either decision rights aren't well allocated, and so, for example, travel approvals are making it to unholy heights in a lot of organizations. Or you start to see overly relational cultures where too many people are consulted in different ways to get to a decision. So the idea for me is not and never will be collaboration for collaboration's sake, but rather how can you think analytically about promoting the connectivity that's going to yield strategic results, and then also use those analytics to see where are there points where we have excessive collaboration that if we can actually drive that down, shifting decision rights, removing role, thinking culturally about how we're working, can have the big benefit of giving back people some of that time. In fact, what I'll share in my session today is we find if you do that well, If you help people replicate the behaviors of the more efficient collaborators, they can actually get back about 18 to 24% of their collaborative time to invest in different places.